Jen, welcome back. um, I do not. I know that the first question was, what is your main what is your number one rule in your consulting? And you answered that it was, just not to direct anybody's journey, not to push, just to let it develop. I do not remember what the follow up was to that. What was it that you were talking about when we
So,
cut out?
so what I was saying was like I really created this rule because of what happened to me. I went through four therapists that um, to find the right one, and um, my second therapist said, "You're trans," and honestly kept repeating it all the time to me, and I was like, I need to figure that out myself. I don't. I need to work through some things, and I needed to do this, and I did, and somebody just pushing it on to me didn't feel right. It didn't feel like I thought, well, maybe I might be, but I don't need you pushing this on to me. And so I'm very clear with my clients and even in my coaching community that we don't tell anybody who they are because um, I help people find that within themselves. So yeah, it was a great question.
So, what was it that pushed you from your journey and trying to figure out your stuff to then helping others? And yeah, let's start there because I have a follow up to that, which will be kind of interesting.
So I I went through something last March where uh, I was like kind of early in the year. I kind of thought about writing a book and thinking about that there's a reason why I have gone through what I've gone through, and and I was sitting in church actually on in March last year, and I was they really just said like open your hands and let God talk to you, and I did, and it's like this moment was like I literally heard this voice say like this is what I created you for, and then I saw myself like standing on a stage talking to hundreds or thousands of people, and realized that I've been thinking about I needed to write this book and uh, and maybe even like create a business, and do something more with it. And I realized right then that this is something that I really, really needed to do. And so, uh, so it was that day that I started writing my book, and I wrote, edited, and published a book in 4 months. And at the same time, was launching an online community, the Genspire Sisterhood, and creating a business because I wanted to help people. As I was going through this journey and sharing all my stuff, I was helping people, and I realized this was easy for me, and it just came natural, and it was just something that I needed to be doing,
Mm,
and it really just like, and eventually it kind of was like I'm doing all of this and helping all these people, and I want to be able to do more. I don't, you know, I'm very limited when I'm like, this isn't my job, or I had another job and stuff. In that sense, like this is my job. This is how I get to help more people, because this is what I do for a living, and I love it.
mhm. Were there ever any moments for you through this entire process of taking on the coaching where some imposter syndrome kicked in? Like, I don't have the authority, I don't have, training or whatever. What was it that kind of allowed you to push forward and be confident in your coaching?
Yeah, I think at first I really thought that I at least needed to be. Well, first off, I didn't want to be a therapist. I realized that for me, being a therapist was going back to school and doing more all of this stuff, right? And for me, at least at that point, I kind of thought I'm kind of limiting myself. I didn't want to play by anybody else's rules. I wanted to write the script. There's anybody telling me what I can and can't do. And I push people, but I push people gently in the way that they want to be pushed. Um, other than just not telling people who they are. But I really I challenge people and give them homework and do all these things. It's way more than just like a therapy. Also really thought at one point that I need to be a certified coach to be valid. And it was working with my coach and just kind of going through life and doing what I was doing, realizing, and my clients saying how much I was helping them, realizing people don't come to me because I need to have a certification or whatever, like I'm in a community. I've learned so much from my coach and the coaching community that I'm part of with her. And even more so, all of my experiences in my life. And people really just want to sit down with somebody who's been through it, done it well, and understand them. Most of my clients have, almost all of my clients have been through therapy, and they had a therapist. They said, I had a therapist and I worked through some things and did stuff, but they don't understand. I have to try to teach some of my teach, what it means to be transgender or where I'm going through. And when I come and talk to you, I don't have to explain anything. It's easy. And you get it and and you can help me. And so I realized in the end that I don't want to be certified. I love what I do and I don't need it. And I think and in some ways it's allowed me to, because sometimes education can limit you and your creativity. And I was in finance and sports before. I get to use my creative brain now in a way that I'm creating groundbreaking concepts and things that I'm taking to the next level and all of it. And I get to use my creative brain now. And even with my clients, I do that. And it's beautiful. I love it.
Walk Faster had asked in the chat, and yes, I did see your note of tackles Emily with tickles. Love you, sister. Love you too, hon. Uh, they were wondering if you work with older adult and particularly post-op trans women who continue to grow into their womanhood. So sort of like, in a way, people whose transition has gone in some ways past where you're at.
It's not something that I've done a lot, I guess, but I definitely could, because I think really a lot of what I do is help people find their confidence. I think really focusing on how can I focus on me instead of focusing on what the world's bringing at me, or what am I not doing? What am I not what am I not doing? What am I not feeling? What am I not I'm not where she is, and that's kind of what I can bring to the table there. It's not something that I've done a lot of. But you mentioned older generation. A lot of my clients are older. I've had clients that are in their 60s and stuff, and thinking about transitioning, and I think it's beautiful. And people always come to me and ask me like, "What's too old to transition?" And like, am I too old? I feel like I'm too old for this. And I'm like, if you don't feel like you're too old and you have a realistic expectation about where you are and where you can be and what you want, and not like I have to be this supermodel, as 20-year-old supermodel if I'm 60 years old, then go for it. Like for me, I transitioned because I wanted to feel right internally, and then all the extra stuff just came along, was amazing, but I wanted to feel right and settled inside, and that's why I did it. That's the best reason to do it, in my opinion. I know that was more of an answer than anybody asked for, but sometimes that's what you get with me. So
Let's talk a little bit about your Finding Your Gender Equilibrium program. How does that sort of differ than your other approaches, or is that kind of what you've been talking through this whole time?
that's kind of mostly what I talk through. And so it's something that I take basically all my clients through. And even if they are thinking they want to transition, I take everybody back through. Really, it starts with like the beginning of your life. Like, what was the first time you thought that your life was different? You were different. You felt different than anybody else. Like, did you cross dress? Did you have these things? And we take it through each step of your life, going and more in depth of than anything you've ever thought. And really it kind of boils down to the fact that I wrote out this story, and I wrote it out, and I shared that story online back in 2021, and that story continued to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And as it grew, I grew in my understanding of who I was. And even when I wrote my book, I took that story and made it bigger and looked more in depth at myself and did all this self reflection. And I think that was where the power was. So that is what I do with my clients: is take them back through their life and think about, what is this? Why did you do this? And and all these different things. And then I let them ask me everything, the next session, and then we take them through this, like, some meditations, and a lot of this big reflection and things, and just challenging everything. And so even if the people want to transition or whatever, they're thinking about it, then it's really still really beneficial, because it can build your confidence and understanding of who you are. And so that's kind of what I do mostly in that way. The other thing that I do offer, is I offer people who are transitioning a mentoring, and it's really more almost like what you go through in, like, a therapy, whatever, where you bring your stuff you want to talk about, and we come talk about it. I can tell you where I've been in my journey. I can share with you, challenge you to explore this, think about this. And so that's a very different thing. That's my mentoring. That's this versus my coaching.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Well, and I like that. Yeah, through your process, you talked about not wanting to go through the schooling and do the whole therapist thing, and then I'm not sure if there's anything with that in coaching with like the rules, the ethics rules there, but I know it would be kind of sticky, be much more difficult to have a sort of session where you sit down and have your client asking you a bunch of questions and sharing fully, openly, and honestly. And it sounds like through your practice, you're able to do that in a way that is really helpful to people.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and yeah, that's why I like it. I don't have to play by anybody's rules. There are no rules for what I do. It's like, my vulnerability has always been my secret. It's why I've created the following that I've helped, and it's been how I've helped everybody that I've helped. It's because I can share anything, anything. That's why my book's called Ask Me Anything, because I can share anything. And when people ask me questions, it's not just because they're in a coaching session, right? Like, it's not because they're just curious about it. It's because they're curious about it within themselves, or they're curious about or it helps somehow. It's going to help them in their journey, and it's amazing some of the questions I come up with. So
Okay, that's an interesting can of worms. What are some of the really interesting questions? Something maybe you weren't expecting, something that comes up a lot. What are some of those?
people, I don't know. People, I mean, I guess they always want to know, like, what was, we kind of talked about it tonight. Like, what is the aha moment? Like, what made you want to transition, or what made you get over the hump? And like, it's mostly that kind of stuff. I don't know why. I think I inflated a little bit there, saying, it's super interesting, but like, yeah, but it was, but mostly it's like, it's those questions that, like, that they're wondering themselves, that are like, why, what, what made you do this? Or I guess really a lot of things. It's like, how did your kids take it? Or how did you navigate this with your spouse? Like, because most of my clients have a spouse that they're trying to navigate it with. And I've been through it, and I did the best that I could. And I have clients that are really successful, with their spouse, and I've prepared some of them even for those hard conversations that they have with them. And I really love being able to do that. Like, I have a client that came out to their spouse, and I'm still waiting to have a session back with them, because I'm trying to find out how it really went. But we really, like, practice everything. Like, I took them through every scenario, like what their spouse was going to say. Like, your spouse could say, "Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing with me. This is so beautiful. I want to be part of this." Or, "I don't think I can do this at all." And like, how are you going to respond? And we work through those things. So yeah, gosh, I love what I do. So much fun.
Yeah. Um, One of the things that really helped me, that there were a couple things in that moment. One was coming across a forum of cross-dressers and the purge and how much it cost them. And it was, all these people, they had, families and important lives and jobs and all that kind of stuff. And they would put it away through, they would get rid of their clothes, they would donate everything away, they would say that, put their foot down on it and say that they weren't going to do it anymore. They're stopping, it was going to affect their lives, it was going to ruin everything. And the forum, the post was about the 6 months, a year, 2 years later, when they bought it all back because it was something that they needed to do. It was something they couldn't get away from. And it was that realization that really kind of helped me get to a point of just accepting it in myself. I still didn't know what it was or where it was going, but that was what helped me realize, okay, if these people that have these big grandiose lives that they're afraid of losing, and if they can't get away from it, if they go back to it, then I need to change the narrative in my mind and understand that this is just something that is part of me that I have to deal with. And once I was able to frame it that way, without the question of the what, the where, the why, all that kind of stuff, just saying, okay, this is part of me that I'm going to have to live with. Then I was able to kind of move further down the journey and get to that point of seeing some of those other things, being open to those things that were coming in to show me that, maybe I was trans and that I could transition. Do you have anything to speak on that?
Yeah, everyone goes through that. Like I feel like that you have to like accept this is at least part of me, and this is not something that can go away anymore. I kept trying to fight it. You mentioning how like people purge and things like that, right? Well, I did things like that. I didn't ever do a full purge. I did a thing where the first thing I did was I was trying to make it work in my marriage, and I said before we have kids, we needed to stop. And so I was gonna dress for 30 days straight in the middle of the night, and that was the first time I did makeup and did these things. Like, to make myself sick of it, like. And it took me 40 days straight, and getting about 2 hours of sleep each night. I did make myself literally sick, and it really was challenging, and it was important. It was hard. I grew a lot, learned a lot about how I could dress better, or do all these things as well at the same time. But 2 weeks later, she was gone. I was back at it again.
Mm,
Most people think, that, oh, I can purge it away and it'll come, and I can just get rid of this side, and it just
yeah,
doesn't happen. I did a slow purge at one point where I was like, and it was honestly in the end, it was kind of an excuse. It was like I told my I told my wife at the time, I was like, I I'm gonna go dress in the basement, and every time that I do, I'm gonna throw something away. I'm gonna slowly purge this out of my life. And I did it until it became extremely hard. And I really felt like I was killing Jen. I was killing this part of this big piece of myself. And that was one of those kind of moments that where I was like, this is part of who I am. And I need to, and I can't let it go. And so yeah, I went through a lot of those moments of like, this is part of who I am. And when I said this is part of who I am, that was the beginning of the end of my marriage, because that was me in her eyes, uh, ending the fight of what she calls a sexual addiction. And
yeah,
we all know it's in a sexual addiction. Let's be honest. Like, it's very, very clear that it's not. I mean, I'm um, at parts of my transition, I have been way less sexual than I ever have in my entire life, and happier.
yeah. Yeah, that was one of the things that made it really hard for me to accept the fact that I was trans was how much of a sexual turn on, how much of a kink it was, or at least felt like. And it wasn't until much later and coming through the other side of it and looking back, understanding, well, it was my only way of exploring it. My only outlet for it was through the sort of sexual exploration part of it. And so it makes sense. We put ourselves in these boxes, and society contributes to that, locks us into these things. And so our only way to access some of these things is through ways like, fetish and things like that. And so it
Mhm.
doesn't mean it's not valid. It just means that that's the only way you had access to it. And that took a very long time to reframe in my mind, and to accept.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that was a big thing for me. It was like, well, like, is it just like an addiction? Like, I mean, I kind of even thought that in myself a little bit. Like, is this something that I do? And and it was something like whenever I did masturbate about it, it made it go away. And so I kind of thought, well, like for a little bit, right? And like, but I
Yeah,
realized in the
yeah.
end that was me clearing my mind, and there was reasons why it never was the same way, and and this is something that I make a point too of like a lot of people in the community want to look down on people who are sissies or people like that, or people fetishing or whatever in that sense. A lot of times there's more going on there. And I want to encourage everybody to think about that and think about how, sometimes it is just sexual, okay? But sometimes like there's something they're still working through, like you know, didn't live in the sexy culture, but like I was interested in it a little bit, to some extent, and thinking about those things. And so I don't ever condemn anybody, like, well, they're not trans or it's not okay, to make it sexualized, whatever nonsense. Like a lot of us have been there, and
Mhm.
fun is part of the journey.
Yeah, yeah. It's a tough bit of it, and like I said, the problem is how it frames it in your mind, and it feeds into the narratives against
Hmm.
trans people, against the reality, and just, yeah, ties into all those feelings of like,
Yeah.
is this a mental illness? Is this something that's wrong with me? And yeah, that fact that you brought up, God, that hits so hard. Masturbating and having that
Hmm.
release. And then I don't know, you didn't say feeling immediate shame, but I did feel immediate shame afterwards, and was just like, would take everything off, and it was over, it was done. And then, it would kind of come back. So it would just kept reinforcing this negative thing in my brain of that this is, something bad. This is this fetish thing. And as soon as I got over that bit, and then it's just shame, and so it's clearly not real, it's not something I really am. And yeah, it's
Hmm.
just all of that twisting of this thing that we feel like we can't access, and it's not something we should access, and so we put it in this tight little box and then find those ways to confirm that bias.
Yeah, we really do. And like it, yeah,
Walk.
and talk about shame. Like I think it did bring up a little bit of shame, I guess. Like I was never really, really big into shame, I guess, or not allow myself to think that. But but the shame, like I guess in the sense that yeah, right after masturbation, like I don't need I don't need this at all. Get this off me. Like and so I guess there was a shame in that sense of like that, you know, it doesn't feel right anymore. And so maybe that's why I kind of thought it was sexual at some point. So it's really complicated and it does and I hate that because you're right, it does complicate how the world sees us as well. And that is a challenge we face.
Walk Faster had put in the chat, when we were talking about the purge stuff, and I just thought that this was a really interesting one to talk about for a couple reasons. They said, once I collected all my girl stuff, loaded it into my car, and drove it up into the East Foothills, I dug a freaking grave and buried that part of me, and then cried. I drove back
Oh my god.
home, and about 2 days later, my ass was back up there digging up that crucial part of myself. I was a dead person walking in between. And that
Yeah.
there's so much to mine there. One, that I am appreciative of that story for you and for your journey, in that that was the thing that showed you that point that I came to in that story before, was like, this is something I can't get rid of, I can't get away from. And I think it's a really important part of the journey to get there. What do you think about that, Jen?
I think that's I love this story actually. They actually went out to go up and dig it that all back up. That's actually so metaphorical and powerful in the same sense. Uh, I think about how talk about how you feel like a dead person walking and those things. Like it brings up for me, like, there were most of my life, a lot of the dressing moments came like 3 up to 4 months, I think, at one point, like, apart. And I remember thinking, like, something's wrong with me. I have to dress like this. This is important to me. Like, and it was like, and I just felt like something was missing the farther along I went on, and then I felt complete when I did. And so it took me many, many years to realize that what I was doing. Actually, I didn't realize what I was doing. It took a trans man who is a chaplain here, me sitting down with him after I think I began my transition, to realize that that was my medicine. Cross-dressing is a medicine, essentially, for if you are transgender and because you're feeling this comfort, right? Like,
Yeah.
I was, because I asked him, I said, why didn't I feel like all these other kids do? Like I feel like, growing up, I didn't feel like I needed to end my life where I had to feel this way, I had to be this way, or I was in the wrong body. He said, if you didn't dress as many times as you did, you likely would have been in that same situation. And I said, because that was your medicine. I said, yeah, that's exactly right. So yeah, I love the story. It's interesting how many people go through the purge, and something, because we all think that we can just get rid of it, and it's not that easy. Because if it was that, if you did purge it or whatever, then it was never for you in the first place.
Mhm.
And I've never heard anybody that ever happened to.
Yeah, that
And I'm
purged and was
I'm
able to truly
honestly
walk
too
away. Yeah.
I'm honestly too financially minded that I never did a full purge, because I knew I'd buy it all back, and I didn't want to do that. I was the finance person in my life, so
Well, I loved this solution, and it's not something I'd ever thought of, but that's so great. Like, especially if you've got like a plastic tub to put it in, if you just pack it all away and go and bury it somewhere random, as long
you
as you
too.
remember where it is, like you can always go back and get it, or you can just let it go. And I think that's the perfect solution for anybody who's at that early stage and kind of questioning and still struggling with it. That's great, because yeah, just go bury it somewhere, and then it's not thrown away. Um, God,
I
I
like
hope.
that, because we've all have gone through those moments where whether it was my slow purge or whatever, like, yeah, those items that you wish you still had, like I had a beautiful dress that I got rid of or something, or and you're like, "Oh, I can't get that back. That stinks."
Yeah, I had some knee-high boots and stuff that I gave to a friend because I'm not gonna do this anymore. It's just like, oh, I miss those. The
Yep.
one really funny thing that I have, and I don't remember like all the details now that they're starting to fade because I'm getting old, but I have a set of panties. They're probably like five boy short panties that are like kind of satiny, silky, that I have purged probably at least three times for different reasons, and then always, like always gone and got them out of the trash, got them out of wherever I it would put them in a bag to go to donate. Well, no, probably just a throwaway because you don't donate panties. But yeah, there've been multiple times that they have been in the trash in a bag to go
Oh,
into the
wow.
trash, whatever. Where like at first I bought them because it was like an easy sort of like maybe my
Mhm.
partner would sort of accept these kind of a thing and not think anything of it because they're shorts or whatever. And then doing the first level purge, or and then later thinking they're too feminine, at one point thinking they weren't feminine enough, and I had to, once I accepted myself, I had to purge any of the boy stuff, and it's like, well, these are shorts, so they're too boyish. And then that was the final one, and I'm just like, realize that no, I can, no, they're women's panties, but two, like I can
Mhm.
be whatever woman that I feel comfortable with. I can be that woman. I don't have to be the super femme, or if I do love being femme, but I don't have to be the super femme all the time. I can be the
Yep.
comfortable casual, and that's fine. And so, of like all of my wardrobe, they're the ones that I think have lasted the longest, and they were the ones that have been thrown away the most.
3 times.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was so funny.
Oh my god. Wow, that is really funny. Yeah, you talk about, like, being, like, super femme or not having to be super femme all the time. Like for anyone who's going through it or thinking about things, like I was I was the dress girl. I literally said when I went to transition, I was only gonna wear dresses. Like everybody's like, no, you're not. That's ridiculous. And I was like, you don't know me. Like, you should go look at my social media and stuff. Like, all I wear are dresses. And I was just wear a dress all the time, right? Like, and I could go casual and I could go dressy and stuff, right? And and through my transition, as I've become more confident with myself, I have most of the time I am pretty casual, and and I found confidence in that and that femininity in that.
Hmm.
And the other thing you talked about was like different clothes or things like that. Like I still have a lot of my former wardrobe. Occasionally I will play with something, throw it on, because now that I feel more feminine, look more feminine, like there's nothing I mean, like women, cis women, wear masculine things or men's stuff all the time, whatever, and nobody thinks anything of it. And so I kind of reclaim some of those things. And when I look at it, and I'm like, I just look like I just look like a woman with a guy's shirt on or something, and it's super fun to kind of play with in that sense too. And that's real power when
Hmm.
you can own what you have, where you've been before, and say, no, this is me. It's a really beautiful moment.
Hmm. Yeah, I haven't gotten to the place of being able to wear like super masculine clothes, with the exception of like I've got a hoodie that was always
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
way too big on me for some reason, and felt kind of silly wearing it in boy mode. But now that I'm in girl mode and I can wear a pair of short shorts and like looks like I've got no pants on, it's just like it's this cute thing. It's very fun. But
That's fun.
um, oh, my brain today. Um, I did want to talk a little bit about some of the things we talked about before the show. You talked briefly about this, and hopefully this is enough of a charger for you to help you remember. You talked about finding happiness before transition. What is some of that work that you do, and how do you help people with that?
So my term that I coined is gender equilibrium, and it's where your life and your gender identity balance. And I really believe that I would have done, if my ex would have done anything to try and um, understand, be kind, like, and not just like hateful towards who I was, then I would have tried to find a way to balance that. And I believe that people can find a way to try and balance their life before they even transition. Doesn't mean it's always going to work, and doesn't mean that your gender equilibrium doesn't change. But but I would have changed how I was doing things a lot. I definitely wouldn't be where I am now. Um, I literally I literally said to her, I said, I just need to get to a point where right now, at least where I'm at, I need to get to a point where you could at least you buy yourself a lip gloss, you could buy me one. And she said, that's offensive. I can't believe you'd say that to me. I was like, well, okay. And so I stepped back and said the same thing about a few months later. She said, yeah, I feel the same exact way. I said, then we don't work because you hate at least half of who I am. And and that was where we just started talking about divorce at that point, because this is who I am, and you can't hate me, and that's not okay. And so, um, but yeah, I help my clients kind of try and work through it and say, like, is there a way you can be happy? And if there's not, then how can we start telling the people in your life, your wife or whatever that is, about who you are,
Mm.
and helping you find whatever your happiness looks like.
But then there are other so many, so it's always a spectrum. There are so many other things in between that can happen where the person has a really hard time with it, but can be sort of helped through the situation. How do you help your clients navigate those sort of things where they don't have the hell no, but it's sort of a steep uphill battle, and how do you work with their spouses, and how do you navigate that?
It's something that I'm kind of starting to do, but it really is like working with my client, like the gender diverse individual, like they are. I really encourage people to give people time to come around and learn, because like think about how long it took you to get here. And so like, yeah, I don't have time to give her 30 years to come to speed up to this speed, right? Like I just don't. But that's why I needed an inch and I didn't get an inch. And so if you can get an inch, like take it and then kind of keep going with it if that's where you feel comfortable doing. Um, and so I kind of like slow people down, of like help them slow their mind and think like, okay, where do I want my spouse to be? How can we get there? And work through it that way.
Mm,
Now, the most interesting part you're talking about, me working with spouses, is that something that I'm going to start doing here soon, because I have a boyfriend, and my boyfriend I met at the Keystone Conference this year as Carla. And so Carla was transitioning, and actually through our weekend together, like has recently kind of just come to this, like where like, no, I just want to be him, and I'm kind of just maybe gender fluid or something. We don't even really have a term for it yet, but I'm in love with the male side, and I like and have fun with the female side. And so I now have stepped my feet into the spouse's shoes, because I'm in love with him and I don't want him to transition. And so it's really kind of complicated in that weird sense, right? Or
mm,
like that is my fear of losing my partner, and that partner in that way.
yeah.
And so yeah, it's kind of crazy that I've literally, like, we were literally talking about it last night in the Gens Bar Sisterhood, in our uh one of our events we do is like a movie night or book night, and we talked about the Danish Girl, and we talked about how I have now put myself in Gerda, the spouse's shoes, because now I've experienced like that the fear of losing your partner,
Mhm.
and so the whole thing's kind of crazy in an amazing way. So it's another stage of my journey that I'm going through, and now we'll be able to help spouses in that way too.
That's great. Yeah, dating while trans is definitely complex. You've got a lot of different things, a lot of a lot more things are open and all that, which is great. But that it also brings up a lot more kind of tumultuous aspects to it as well.
It does. It's challenging. Yeah, I've been doing it for a while, and mostly dating men, which is people. One of the things people are most interested with me is how like I only dated women before, and now I mostly date men, and they're like, "How did you make sense of all of that?" And uh, it gets kind of crazy to some extent, Like I really thought that I was a straight man, and then I thought I was a straight woman, and now I'm pan, because like I've dated men, women, trans women, and trans men, and so like, um, I think we kind of like we talk about expectations, like where like you have this expectation for yourself, and like this is how it is. Every single thing that I've said, this is how it is something that I've gone back on, pretty much like everything, and yeah. So it's the whole journey is a journey, and
Yeah.
let it roll, people. That's what I tell you.
Well,
Let it roll, because
I've really enjoyed my sexual journey for a couple reasons. One, I've been afraid of like every single step of my transition. Like the next step was always something that was terrifying for me. Um, so it's been a whole long thing. But the one thing I wasn't afraid of was having who I was attracted to change. For some reason I was able to just accept that and go like, whoever I'm in love with, whoever I'm attracted to, I'm attracted to. Like it doesn't matter. That's not going to be a big deal. And that was a big thing for me. The other thing that I find really funny about it was when I came out to my parents, the question I got the most, I got it repeatedly. Are you sure you're not just gay? And I
Yeah.
love that the
Yeah.
way that that always is phrased with the word just in it, as if there's like these levels and gay is better. Um,
Right.
and I was never gay. I as someone who looked or presented masculine, I had no interest in guys, and it was like as a woman, I was attracted to the idea, I but like no, it was as a woman with a guy I was interested. I wasn't ever interested as someone as a guy or someone presenting mostly masculine with a guy, and then once I got to a certain point in my transition where I felt comfortable in my femininity and I was seen as a woman, then it was just like, okay, yeah, let's go. And so then you're like, well, I don't know how to describe my sexuality then, because no, I've never been gay, but now, yeah, I'm extremely attracted to guys, and
Yeah.
so what does that mean? And it's just a very fun part of the journey to go through and explore. And I think the hardest part to define. I love that we have the pansexual thing, because you can just throw it over there and be like, I guess I'm bi or pan or something. But
Yep.
I can't
Yep.
actually answer that question.
It really is. It really is something that we all go, well, almost all of us go through. Like, it is the most thing that people reach out to me on Instagram that are interested and want to talk and things like they're like, now or in the or my sister community, like reach out and say like, I never thought that I liked men, and now I'm really interested, and I can't get it out of my mind. Jen, I can't get it out of my mind. It's driving me crazy. And like, and I tell them there's multiple ways this could be. Like some of us think that like there's it makes you feel really really feminine, the idea of being with a man, because that's what our gender stereotypes and gender roles have kind of like made you believe, right?
Mhm.
But then you also could be just like you could be changing, you could be like bi or pan or something like that, and like that's okay too, but like but sometimes it is just like this is an idea that you have in your mind, and we're all about how feminine can I feel, and there can be piece of that. So this is something that I kind of work with my clients with as well, and it's a fun, interesting topic about like sexuality. It's interesting because we all try to separate sexuality and gender identity through this work that we do, and um, but it still kind of comes together in some fashions, and that's what I try and help people kind of break it apart or understand it. It's all fun, interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, Frank Pearson chat just said all the terms are just another box, right? And that
Mhm.
is the problem, the pitfall that you can fall into a lot of times, is trying to define
Yeah,
things. And when you find the peace and the ease in your life is when you no longer feel like you have to define it. Like, you can just be who you are, be with who you want to be with, and be attracted to whoever you find attractive, and not have to think about it, not have to define it. um, Definitions and those sorts of things can help you frame and understand it, but getting away from needing to understand it is sort of one of the best steps there.
absolutely. But like you talk about boxes, it's kind of natural for us all to want to be box ourselves a little bit, right?
Because
And
when you're in a box, there are other people in the box with you, and you feel
yeah,
a sense of
because
normalization.
you feel in community, right? We call ourselves LGBTQIA plus because now we have pride and we're part of this huge community that of hopefully mostly love, right? And so you can feel in part of that. When we put ourselves into smaller boxes, it kind of make you feel more in touch with your identity. I don't really have an issue too much with you boxing yourself, but just don't be stuck on one box. Like, like you may change your box, and that's okay. Like, and so that's kind of where like, well, but I was straight, like, well, so maybe you're not now. Like, or maybe you were wrong. Like, that's okay, like, and it's okay to explore. And I think that's one thing that I've really learned through this life and my recent everything is like that exploration is and very, very important. And um in all fashions, gender identity, sexuality, sexuality is something that I'm still kind of exploring a little bit at times, because I'm not even fully putting myself in the pan box right now. Like, I mean, I think that's where I'm at, but I mean, why does it? I don't have to limit myself, you know. And
Yeah.
if you want to redefine your own box or throw it out the box, then great. You know, like however you need to be, do it.
Yeah. Frank Pierce had also said before, and I let this one kind of slide into the past in the chat a little bit because it's such a big topic. There's so many different ways we could take this. They asked, "What do you say to a spouse who wants their husband back, quote unquote?" So that suggests to me that this is somebody that has been giving some inches, has been, trying to accept and try to go along with the journey, and then gets to a point of that feeling of longing or loss for what was before, and kind of wanting to go back. What do you sort of say to someone who's dealing with that?
That's hard.
Yeah.
That's really, really hard. I mean, this is kind of, we talked about like, just talk about with the Danish girl, and like where she even says like, I need my husband, go get my husband. And like, and that is something that I've even feared with my boyfriend, of like that there's some point that I could feel that I need that. Now, it's really hard from our standpoint, because this is who we are. And if someone's asking you to fully change back and not accepting you in any way, then I don't know, that may be kind of something you have to kind of decide for yourself. Like, where this where you want to be anymore? I mean, that's the hardest question that there is, but is that really where you want to be anymore? But if it's like, if your partner's still showing that they want to understand, and they're okay with you being you in the way that you're comfortable, in a way you're comfortable with, being part-time or whatever that is, then that's something you can explore as well. But that's a
Yeah,
really,
and
really
that
hard question.
well, yeah, and that's the thing you got to go through in transition with your partner. You have to do it at a pace that you both can agree on. That makes it very challenging because you've come out and you need all these things, you want to do these things, you've repressed it for so long. Like you said before, your partner doesn't have that background. They don't understand that. So it's sort of dumped in their lap, and they're having to catch up really quickly, which can be extremely difficult. I'd focus on the fact that they've had this willingness to go along with you to this point. And yeah, you have to just figure out that balance of like, what speed do I absolutely need to move at here, and what speed
Mhm.
can my partner move through this with me, and how do we find that sort of give and take? How do we make this sort of non-linear in a way that's not from point A to B, but there's some kind of meandering back and forth that is still comfortable for me and comfortable for my partner. That is a very difficult thing to navigate, and yeah, it's at some point the person that like, again, the box around that whole person where all the things fit in a certain way, and was this ideal that they had of you in the past, um, is going to be changed drastically as you move through your transition. Like, we don't get to where Jen and I are without having a lot of drastic changes, and so it makes a lot of sense that your partner would feel that at some point. But I'm still very optimistic that they've come along with you to this point to, that maybe you can work through this going forward. And it's just a lot of talks about that of like, where's the give and take, where's the push forward and the pull back, that makes everybody comfortable.
Communication is the most important thing. I mean, in any relationship, but especially in a relationship where you're trying to go through this life with your partner that is really challenging, whether
Yeah.
it's transition or just finding that balance in your gender identity. And it's really, really important.
Well, I don't know if you found this, but I have learned this through my my work trying to help people through their transition, trying to help couples, those sorts of things, is the understanding. The belief before was that it was a tragedy if a relationship broke up. Losing that person, losing that support, all of that was one of the worst things about transition. But I've seen the benefit of the other side as well. The fact that your transition no longer has training wheels on it or boundaries or anything. You can move at your own pace. You can move through it as you feel comfortable, without question, without worry. And so I I eventually got to this place of understanding that there is good on both sides of that equation. Staying with a spouse or losing a spouse through it, losing a relationship, or just sometimes I think one of the best case things is that your relationship just changes. Maybe you're not intimate partners anymore, with forever as your future, but you're able to be friends, and they're able to still kind of be there and support you through it, though they can't go along with you on your journey completely, and remain your partner. So there's a lot of ways to go through it, but like I said, it's been a really interesting journey for me to go from, oh, losing your partner is a terrible thing, to seeing how it can actually help and benefit some trans folks that go through it.
It does. I mean, and I say I wouldn't be where I am if she would have really tried. And in some ways, it was a gift that I get to now live my life how I want to. And and I'm not gonna say that's for how it is for everybody else, but for me, like you said, like that sometimes there's an other side of that coin, and that is freedom. That is freedom to express. Even when I was like just moved out and I wasn't living full time yet, I was dressed every time here. When the kids weren't here, I was dressed every time. And then I started going out and doing all those things when I had safer spaces or things I could go to, and just getting the opportunity to be me. So yeah, you kind of a relationship um, can be really really good for you, and it can also be really limiting as well.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Much more succinct way of putting what I was saying. So we have gone over time and talked at good length here, and you're right. I know that you and I could talk for probably another 2 or 3 hours, but in interest of kind of like making some edit that I can actually get my arms around, are there any things that you'd like to talk about in closing that we didn't really get a chance to touch on?
Um, we talked about a lot today. It was fun. It was, I guess, the one thing I wanted to um, highlight, we kind of talked about briefly before, was that I'm trying to change the narrative here of all types of things, and being vulnerable and open in new ways. And uh, I even have my own podcast, and it's called Talking Sexes. And I have about, I think we're close to like 13 episodes or something like that, or whatever. But we've now taken a break because it's me and a trans man, and because really we're giving two sides of the gender equation, and talking about the questions that everyone's always been interested in, like the questions people think about but they won't say out loud. Like one of my fun ones was like, why does my guy get so freaked out when I don't orgasm during sex? Like we literally get into like crazy freaking stuff, and it's fun, it's funny, it's interesting, and it really makes people think about things. So it's almost like you have two trans people that are very open and are very interested in sharing both sides of their life. So it's like almost having like four co-hosts. So it's a really super interesting thing. I'm looking for a trans man that's open and open about talking about sex and everything and else it is. So if anybody knows anybody, please reach out. I'm still trying to find that right co-host for me to do that again at some point, because it's a really powerful podcast that will go back up again. But that's one of my random things. But no, I've had so much fun tonight. This is incredible. I love what you're doing here, and what a fun way to have a live show. Like, I've been on several podcasts, but this was super fun. And honestly, I was a little bit nervous because like I don't do much live, it's a lot of like, I know I'm very ADHD. Okay, everybody. And I have really learned to not even accept it, but to let it, like, that's how my mind works, and just love it and embrace it and create with it. And so uh it's been super fun tonight. And I really appreciate having me on, Emily. It was such a great experience.
Yeah, yeah, it has been super fun. We did get one more thing that came in, and it's
Love
a
it.
random one, but I love it because it's something that I've just experienced recently. And then we will really close it out. Walk Faster asks Jennifer, "Do you climb on top?" And the reason I wanted to jump into this one is I
I
just
love
did that for the first time recently. My partner and I have been navigating
Uh-huh.
sex. I thought a relationship between two bottoms would be extremely difficult, and would be
Uh-huh.
very difficult for us to figure out how to make it work and all that kind of stuff. And we have really gotten into a good groove and figured things out. And yeah, I tried being on top, like cowgirl style recently, and
Uh-huh. Yeah.
holy crap, was that life changing. That was
Difficult.
wonderful. I highly recommend it.
Oh,
Do you
good.
have any comments on that?
I have not done much of it, to be honest. I'm not super sexually experienced, to be honest, but it's something that my boyfriend and I have talked about that I will. I am very, 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 very much a bottom. Let's make that very clear. And even with like women, like, I'm more of a pillow princess, so it's kind of interesting. But uh, but yeah, no, I think we also need to kind of recognize that, like we said, climbing on top, like, doesn't mean you're not a bottom, and um, doesn't mean it's not feminine. I
Yeah,
mean, cis women do it all the time too. So I'm kind of excited to experience that as well,
yeah,
especially with my big boyfriend. So I love the question. I like that we're getting. I like sexy talk. It's fun too. So it's good.
yeah. You know what? I think we've just come to the realization, and at least I have, that we need a part two. We need an after dark version. I mean, I'm sure it's after dark where most of our viewers are
We
at.
totally
But
should. It'll be so fun.
okay, we'll get that on the books. What are you working on mainly now? What is your main focus?
My main focus is I've recently launched a program called Finding Your Gender Equilibrium, and well, excuse me, it's called the Equilibrium Collective, and it's helping people find out who they are, where they want to go, and how to get there. And it's a very in-depth coaching program that I'm doing,
Sounds like
and
it. Yes.
very in-depth. Like, it's my largest program I've ever offered, and people get two coaching sessions with me a month. They get one group coaching session a month within just the Equilibrium Collective members, small group, and they get real time access to me through Voxer, that they can come like chat with me if they need something that's going on with their life, and they
Okay.
get um, and then they get a copy of my best selling book, autographed copy of a best selling book or whatever. So, but yeah, but the big thing is like getting real time access to me to when they're struggling with something.
Jennifer Marie, thank
I
you
love
so
it.
much for coming on the show and sharing your story. It's been wonderful to have you here.
It's been so great, Emily. Everybody, thank you for joining us. And yeah, thank you. And follow me on social media at LUV Jennifer Marie. I would love to see you there.